A Frontier Promise by Audrey Sinclair. The summer sun blazed down on the town of Riversbend, casting long shadows across the dusty main street as Clara Montgomery stepped down from the stagecoach. Her blue traveling dress was wrinkled from the 3-day journey, and a fine layer of trail dust coated her hat and shoulders. She gripped her valise tightly, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with cautious eyes. Riversbend wasn't much to look at. A single street lined with wooden buildings, some displaying fresh paint while others weathered under the Wyoming sky. Nothing like the bustling streets of Philadelphia she'd left behind. "First time in Riversbend, miss?" The stagecoach driver handed down her trunk. "Yes," Clara replied, straightening her hat. "I'm here to take over my uncle's mercantile." The driver's eyebrows rose. "Montgomery's General Store? Heard about old Jeremiah's passing. Good man." Clara nodded, the familiar pang of grief washing over her. The letter had arrived 6 weeks ago, informing her of Uncle Jeremiah's sudden death and the surprising news that he'd left his business to his only niece. With nothing holding her in Philadelphia after her father's investment firm collapsed, leaving her family in ruin, Clara had made the decision to start fresh in the West. "The store's just down the street," the driver pointed. "Blue awning. Can't miss it." "Thank you." Clara gathered her courage along with her belongings and made her way down the boardwalk. The mercantile was easy to spot, Montgomery's General Store painted in faded letters across the front. Clara found the key exactly where the lawyer's letter said it would be, hidden behind a loose board near the back entrance. The door creaked open to reveal shelves of goods covered in a thin layer of dust. It had been closed for 2 months since her uncle's death. Clara set her belongings down and walked through the silent aisles, running her fingers along the countertop. This place, this town, was her future now. She just needed to make it work. A knock at the front door startled her from her thoughts. Through the window, she could see a tall man in a cowboy hat waiting on the porch. Brushing dust from her skirt, Clara moved to answer it. "Store's not open," she said, cracking the door just enough to speak to the stranger. The man removed his hat, revealing wind-blown dark hair and the most striking blue eyes Clara had ever seen. They reminded her of the sea glass she'd collected as a child along the Delaware shore. "Miss," he nodded politely, "I'm not here to buy. Name's Jackson Reeves. I supply the beef for most of the businesses in town. Had an arrangement with Mr. Montgomery." "I see." Clara opened the door wider. "I'm Clara Montgomery, Jeremiah's niece." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps curiosity. "My condolences about your uncle. He was well respected here." "Thank you, Mr. Reeves." "Just Jackson, please." Clara nodded. "Well, Jackson, I've only just arrived. I'm afraid I'm not ready to discuss business arrangements yet." "Of course." He replaced his hat. "I just wanted to introduce myself. We can talk when you're settled." His gaze swept over the dusty store. "That's a big job for one person." "I'm not afraid of hard work." One corner of his mouth lifted in a half smile. "I don't doubt that, Miss Montgomery. But if you need any help, folks around here were fond of your uncle. You just need to ask." "I'll keep that in mind." After Jackson left, Clara locked the door and surveyed the overwhelming task before her. Tomorrow she would begin the hard work of reviving her uncle's business. Tonight, she would allow herself to feel the weight of the challenge she'd undertaken. Jackson Reeves rode back to his ranch, the image of Clara Montgomery's determined green eyes lingering in his mind. When he'd heard Jeremiah's niece was coming to claim the store, he'd expected a fragile Eastern woman who'd sell the place within a month. But there was a steeliness behind her proper manners that surprised him. His foreman, Miguel, met him at the corral. "How's the new shopkeeper?" "Not what I expected," Jackson admitted, dismounting. Miguel chuckled. "Pretty." Jackson shot him a look. "I didn't notice." "Sure you didn't." Miguel's knowing grin suggested otherwise. 3 years had passed since Jackson's wife Sarah had died in childbirth, taking their son with her. 3 years of pouring himself into building the ranch, of existing rather than living. He'd buried his grief beneath hard work and responsibility for his men and his cattle. "She'll need help getting that place back in order," Jackson said, changing the subject. "Might be good for business to offer a hand." Miguel nodded sagely. "For business, of course." Jackson ignored his friend's teasing. He was simply being neighborly, nothing more. The next morning, Clara woke at dawn in the small apartment above the store. She'd spent hours cleaning it the night before, making the space livable. Now, dressed in a simple work dress, she began the task of taking inventory. Many shelves were nearly empty. Her uncle must have been declining orders as his health failed. The store's ledger confirmed her suspicions. Sales had dropped in the months before his death. If she was going to make this work, she needed to restock quickly and regain the town's confidence. A knock interrupted her calculations. Jackson Reeves stood outside with two other men, all wearing work clothes. "Good morning, Miss Montgomery," he called when she opened the door. "Thought you might appreciate some help." Clara hesitated. In Philadelphia, accepting help from men often came with expectations she wasn't willing to meet. But this wasn't Philadelphia, and she genuinely needed assistance. "That's very kind, Mr. Reeves. These are my ranch hands, Miguel and Thomas," Jackson introduced the men. "We've brought tools for any repairs. Just tell us where to start." Clara directed Thomas to fix the sagging porch steps while Miguel tackled the leaking roof. Jackson offered to help her clean and organize the store's interior. They worked side by side, sorting merchandise and sweeping years of dust from corners. "Your uncle mentioned you in his letters," Jackson said as they rearranged a display of tools. "Said you had a good head for business." Clara looked up in surprise. "He wrote about me." Jackson nodded. "He was proud of how you helped your father with his accounts." "I didn't realize he knew," Clara said softly. "We weren't close. He and my father disagreed about many things." "He kept track of you, though." Jackson handed her a hammer to place on the shelf. "Said you were educated at some fancy ladies' school." "Thornfield Academy for Young Ladies," Clara confirmed. "Though I learned more helping my father than I ever did there. They were more concerned with teaching us how to pour tea properly than anything useful." Jackson's laugh was unexpected, rich and genuine. Not much call for proper tea service in Riversbend. "No, I suppose not." Clara found herself smiling. "Those standards shouldn't be abandoned just because one lives in the West." "Is that what you think of us? That we've abandoned standards?" Clara flushed. "I didn't mean." "I'm teasing you, Miss Montgomery." His eyes squinted at the corners. "We might not stand on ceremony, but you'll find folks here value honesty and hard work above fancy manners." By midday, the store was taking shape. Clara insisted on providing lunch for the men, using the small stove in her apartment to prepare simple sandwiches and coffee. As they ate on the newly repaired porch, the town doctor stopped by to introduce himself. Following him came the blacksmith, the banker, and several other townspeople, all curious about Jeremiah's niece. Clara found herself the center of attention, answering questions about her plans for the store. "Will you be staying long-term?" Mrs. Patterson, the hotel owner, asked. "That's my intention," Clara replied firmly. "This is my home now." She didn't miss the quick glance Mrs. Patterson exchanged with the banker's wife, or the speculative look they both gave Jackson. Small towns, it seemed, were the same everywhere, always on the lookout for potential matches among the unmarried. After everyone left and the men returned to their work, Clara approached Jackson. "I want to thank you for your help today, and for introducing me to everyone." "They'd have found their way here regardless," he said. "But you're welcome. Do you have a supplier in mind for restocking?" "Not yet. My uncle's records show he ordered from Denver, but the last delivery was months ago." Jackson nodded. "There's a freight company that makes regular runs. The owner, Walter Davis, is reliable. I can introduce you." "That would be helpful. Thank you." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. Clara noticed a small scar near his temple, partially hidden by his hair. He noticed the light dusting of freckles across her nose, barely visible beneath a smudge of dust. Jackson broke the silence first. "We should finish those shelves before sundown." Clara nodded, inexplicably flustered. "Yes, of course." Over the next 2 weeks, Jackson found reasons to visit the store almost daily. Sometimes he brought fresh beef or vegetables from his garden. Other times he stopped by to fix something Clara hadn't even realized needed repair. His ranch hands teased him mercilessly about his sudden interest in town affairs. Clara, for her part, was determined not to read too much into his attention. Men like Jackson Reeves, handsome, established, respected, weren't interested in women like her. She was too practical, too independent. Her father had often lamented that she'd never make a proper wife with her unladylike interest in business matters. Still, she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach when the bell above the door announced his arrival, or how her days seemed brighter when he was around. The store reopened to a steady stream of customers, curious about the new proprietress and eager to see the improvements. Clara won them over with fair prices and a willingness to order special items from Denver. She added touches that her uncle had never considered: a small reading corner with penny dreadfuls and Harper's magazines, homemade preserves from local farms, and detailed ledgers that tracked customers' preferences. "You've worked wonders," Jackson said one evening as he helped her close up shop. "The store hasn't been this busy in years." Clara flushed with pleasure. "People are just curious." "It's more than that. You have a way with folks." He leaned against the counter. "Even old Mrs. Whitaker, and she doesn't like anyone." Clara laughed. "She reminds me of my grandmother. Prickly on the outside, but appreciative of quality goods and straight talk." "You've got her figured out." Jackson hesitated. "There's a social at the church this Saturday. The whole town will be there. Would you consider attending with me?" Clara looked up, startled. "With you?" "As friends," he added quickly. "Thought you might like to meet more people." "I'd like that," Clara said, trying to ignore her disappointment at the word friends. "Thank you for the invitation." The church social buzzed with activity, tables laden with food, children running between adults, a small band playing lively tunes. Clara wore her best dress, a green silk that brought out her eyes, and had spent extra time arranging her hair. Jackson introduced her to ranchers and farmers whose land lay outside town, to families with children in tow, to elderly residents who remembered when Riversbend was nothing more than a trading post. Everyone welcomed her warmly, though Clara noticed several young women eyeing her speculatively when she stood beside Jackson. "Would you care to dance?" he asked as the band struck up a waltz. Clara nodded, allowing him to lead her to the makeshift dance floor. His hand was warm at her waist, his movements confident as they joined the other couples. "I should warn you," she said, "I haven't danced in quite some time." "You're doing fine," his eyes held hers. "Just follow my lead." As they turned around the floor, Clara became aware of whispers and glances. "People are staring," she murmured. "Let them," Jackson replied. "It's been a while since I've danced too." Later, as they walked back to the store under a sky scattered with stars, Clara gathered her courage. "How long has your wife been gone?" Jackson's step faltered slightly. 3 years. Sarah died in childbirth. Our son too." "I'm so sorry." Clara's heart ached for his loss. "The ranch was our dream," he continued after a moment. "I almost sold it afterward. Couldn't bear to stay, but couldn't bear to leave either." "What changed your mind?" "Time. Work. Responsibility for my men." He glanced at her. "What about you? No sweetheart back east?" Clara shook her head. "My father's business failure made me an unsuitable match in Philadelphia society." "Their loss," Jackson said quietly. They reached the store, and Clara unlocked the door. Standing on the threshold, she turned to thank him for the evening. "I'm glad you came to Riversbend," he said suddenly. In the silver moonlight, his expression was open, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. Clara's breath caught as he leaned forward slowly, giving her time to step away. Instead, she tilted her face up to meet his. The kiss was gentle, questioning. His hand came up to cup her cheek, and Clara closed her eyes, savoring the sensation of his lips on hers. When they parted, neither spoke for a long moment. "Good night, Clara," he finally said, his voice husky. "Good night, Jackson." She watched him walk away before closing the door, her fingers touching her lips where his had been. The following weeks brought a routine that Clara cherished. She ran the store during the day, slowly expanding her inventory and customer base. Most evenings, Jackson would stop by after finishing his ranch work. Sometimes they'd share a simple meal in her apartment. Other times they'd walk through town or sit on the store's porch, talking as the sun set. Clara learned about his childhood in Texas, his dreams for the ranch, his friendship with Miguel that dated back to the war. Jackson listened as she spoke of her mother's early death, her father's high expectations, her love of literature and mathematics. They discovered shared interests and passionate disagreements, laughing over their different perspectives. The townsfolk watched their courtship with approval. Clara had proven herself capable and fair in business, while Jackson was one of the most respected men in the territory. They made a handsome couple, people said. A perfect match. But Clara's practical nature couldn't ignore the obstacles. She had the store now, roots in Riversbend. What would marriage mean? Would Jackson expect her to give up her independence, the business she was building? She'd seen too many women subsumed by their husbands' lives, their own dreams forgotten. Her worries came to a head when Mrs. Patterson stopped by the store one afternoon. "Such a beautiful couple you and Mr. Reeves make," the older woman sighed. "Reminds me of my Harold and me years ago." "We're just friends," Clara demurred. Mrs. Patterson laughed. "Of course, dear. But a man like Jackson Reeves will want a proper wife, someone to make a home at the ranch. The store's been a nice diversion for you, but surely you don't plan to keep working once you're married." Clara stiffened. "The store isn't a diversion, Mrs. Patterson. It's my livelihood and my future." "But surely when Jackson proposes—" "If Mr. Reeves or any man proposes," Clara interrupted, "he'll be proposing to a shopkeeper. That won't change." The conversation left Clara unsettled. She avoided Jackson for several days, making excuses when he invited her to dinner or offered to help with store maintenance. Her feelings for him had grown deeper than she'd intended, but she wouldn't sacrifice the independence she'd fought for. Jackson finally confronted her one evening after closing time. "Have I offended you somehow?" "No," Clara said, busying herself with arranging items on a shelf. "Then why are you avoiding me?" She sighed, turning to face him. "Mrs. Patterson visited the other day. She had some interesting thoughts about our friendship." Understanding dawned on his face. "Ah, town gossip. I should have expected that." "She seemed certain you'd be proposing any day now, and equally certain I'd sell the store to become a proper rancher's wife." Jackson leaned against the counter. "And that bothers you? The thought of being my wife?" "No," Clara flushed. "I mean, that's not. The issue is the assumption that I'd give up the store, my independence." "Did I ever ask you to give up anything?" "No," she admitted. "Clara," Jackson moved closer, taking her hands in his, "I admire your determination, your business sense. It's part of why I fell in love with you." Her eyes widened. "You love me?" "More than I thought possible." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "After Sarah died, I never expected to feel this way again. You brought something back to life in me." Clara's throat tightened with emotion. "Jackson, I don't want you to give up your store. I want a partner, not a possession." He smiled ruefully. "Though I admit, I've imagined what our life might be like. You running the store in town, me handling the ranch, building something together. People would talk." "People always talk," he shrugged. "Let them. All that matters is what we want." Clara searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity. "And what do you want, Jackson Reeves?" "You," he said simply. "However you'll have me." The last of Clara's reservations melted away. She stepped into his embrace, resting her head against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, his arms strong around her. "I love you too," she whispered, "but I won't be a conventional wife." Jackson laughed softly. "I'd be disappointed if you were." Their wedding took place that fall in the same church where they'd first danced. Clara wore a cream-colored gown ordered from Denver, and Jackson a new black suit that made his blue eyes even more striking. The entire town attended, celebrating with a feast and dancing that lasted well into the night. True to their agreement, Clara continued running the store while Jackson managed the ranch. They split their time between her apartment above the Mercantile and his ranch house outside town, scandalizing some of the more traditional residents, but finding a balance that worked for them. As winter settled over Riversbend, bringing quiet evenings by the fire and busy days preparing for the holidays, Clara reflected on the unexpected turns her life had taken. She had come west seeking a fresh start, a way to support herself after her family's downfall. She had found that, and so much more, a community, a purpose, and a love she hadn't been looking for. One snowy evening, as they sat in the ranch house watching the flames dance in the fireplace, Jackson took her hand. "Any regrets? About coming west? About us?" Clara shook her head, lacing her fingers through his. "Not one. This may not be the life I planned, but it's better than anything I could have imagined. Even with all the hard work, the dust and the cattle and the long hours, especially with those things," she leaned against his shoulder. "We're building something together, Jackson. Something that matters." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "A future." "Yes," Clara agreed, watching the snow fall outside the window, coating the Wyoming landscape in pristine white. "Our future." In the distance, the mountains stood sentinel against the darkening sky, unchanging yet ever-changing with the seasons. Like the frontier itself, their life together would have challenges and unexpected joys, hardships and triumphs. But they would face them together, a partnership forged in the wild beauty of the West. a promise made and kept under open skies.